Did you ever see the movie The Big Short? This is the movie that depicts how fraudulent mortgage loans in the United States leading up to 2008 paved the way for the massive housing market bubble being burst into what became a worldwide financial collapse. This was seen coming a mile away by a few eccentric experts, but nobody wanted to listen to them. But in this case, I see this massive collapse in the mind-body industry coming. Hey everyone, it's Irene here. I want to remind everybody of an article that I wrote a long time ago. So if you're new to me here, I'm all about the nervous system, healing trauma, neuroplasticity. I've been in this world for, I counted the other day, it was like 28 years, which is hard to believe. I've been really heavy into the healing trauma work, the nervous system work, neuroplasticity since 2008, and in the mind-body neuroplasticity world since 2004. So it's been a chunk of time. And about 10 years ago, it was 2016, November of 2016, I wrote probably, in my opinion, one of the best articles. It's really an essay of my life. And it is titled, "Is There a Mindfulness Bubble Waiting to Burst?" I'm going to say that again. Is there a mindfulness bubble waiting to burst? If you're watching this and you've already watched, or sorry, not watched, if you are watching this and you have read that article, please let me know in the comments below. Maybe that's how you found me so many years ago. We originally posted it on Medium, and then it came over to my website in 2020. And it's a longer article. So a Medium says it's about 20 minutes to read this. If you haven't read this article, I really recommend it. And the reason why is I am going to be bringing this article back a lot more in 2025. The reason why is I feel that folks are finally ready for this article. And I'm going to read an excerpt from the article to kind of give you a teaser, and then I really hope that once this video is done, you go and you take some time to read this article. If it takes you a week to read it, that's good. Just make sure you read the full length of this article. But I got thinking about this article last week when I was doing a call with some of our members of the 21-day nervous system tune-up course. This is one of my courses. And what I was really outlining in this intro call was how darn important it is to go slow and to build foundation and capacity and this trauma healing nervous system neuroplasticity work. It's not just about getting a release out of the body. It's not about just being in the somatic workout world. It's not about just doing a movement or moving your pelvis. It's not about just sensing your sensations or feelings. It's not just about expression. It's not just about orienting. It is an entire theory, methodology, concept of the human system and how our human system is built, what our birthright is, and why we have traveled so far off of track, and really why we are so unwell, generally speaking, as a human species. So I always do these intros for those who are new because it's tough to kind of understand how complex this stuff is when we've been fed this information that we give. Here's a quick fix, here's a solution, here's a pill, pop it and you'll be better next week. And I learned this when I was in my more scientific training, academic training. I still remember being given this page in one of our manuals that shows someone just being given pills. And again, nothing wrong with certain pharmaceuticals when needed and not long term, but there's this image, picture this image, if you will, of this man in like a ditch, and he can't get out, and someone's above him and he's just throwing him pills and solutions. And it's like, here, take this and just stay down there. And then the other image was someone going, oh, I see you need some help getting out. Let me give you a ladder so that you can climb out of this pit. And this was in an exercise physiology course, but it was all about the importance of the person getting the tools to help themselves, right? It's that same kind of proverb, give a man a fish and he eats for a day, teach him how to fish and he will eat and know how to feed himself for his entire life. So during this call last week, someone wrote something in the chat and they said, I've learned why the so-called nervous system media hacks and resets don't work in the long term. So they said, this new student said, I finally learned why all these nervous system social media hacks and resets don't work in the long term. And this person is right. You can't reset your nervous system. We aren't a computer where you just shut it off and it just boots back up. It doesn't work that way. I wish it were that way, but it's not true. So this comment from a new member made me start thinking about this old article. This article that is titled, Is There a Mindfulness Bubble Waiting to Burst? And I'm going to read an excerpt. As I said, it's a long article, but it outlines in many ways, in my opinion, the thesis for what we need to do as humans to start learning how to rewire, regulate, and restore capacity to our entire system. Now, many of you know this. For some of you, you've been here with me for years. Some of you have been with me for over a decade, and that is so cool. So you've gone through this path. You know that it's not easy, but it is worth it. For those new here, there's going to be a little stress, a little uncertainty, like, does this really work? I'm not sure. I'm just doing these little things and it seems like nothing is working. Trust me when I say slow is important. Less is more, but it comes down to consistency and doing the right practices, getting the right education on board. But I wrote this after I watched the movie called The Big Short. Fabulous movie depicting the financial collapse of 2008. I won't go into the history of that. If you don't know what that is and how that happened, the movie actually outlines it to the T. And so I watched this movie back in 2016, and I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, I am seeing this happen slowly in the mindfulness industry. I'm seeing this happen in the mind-body world. I know that it's not enough to be mindful and meditate. Nothing wrong with these things. I explained it in the article. But we have to have some things in place first before we go to that higher consciousness training. And my students know this. They can back this up time and time again. They've tried to meditate. They've tried to be mindful. They've even tried to release their traumas with various somatic exercises, and it doesn't work. And that's because we're more complex than that. So I'm going to read for a little bit. Bear with me here. And like I said, I really recommend reading the whole article. That will be your homework for 2025, is to read this article and really understand that this is a long game, this nervous system healing stuff. So this is about halfway down the article. So I write, did you ever see the movie The Big Short? This is the movie that depicts how fraudulent mortgage loans in the United States leading up to 2008 paved the way for the massive housing market bubble being burst into what became a worldwide financial collapse. A lot of people lost a lot, including their lives. This was seen coming a mile away. This was seen coming a mile away by a few eccentric experts, but nobody wanted to listen to them. To share an excerpt from this movie, you can watch it here. Of course, you can link on that on the article. The crazy guy in the scene, played by, I believe it was Steve Carroll, says, I found something really interesting. The whole housing market is propped up on these bad loans. They will fail. Then the sane guy in the suit says to the crazy guy, the housing market is rock solid, ! Then the crazy guy says, it's a time bomb. Who do you think was right? The crazy guy, of course. So back to the article. meaning Irene, I feel like one of the guys that saw it coming, but in this case, I see this massive collapse in the mind-body industry coming. And here's the thing. 10 years ago, I was talking about this, and it wasn't something that people wanted to hear because it was new, this mindfulness thing, this meditation thing. Now I think enough people have tried to meditate and mindfulness themselves out of their trauma, and they're realizing it's actually not working. It might provide a little bit of management, a bit of containment, but it's not getting to the root of what is off, and that is stored traumatic stress, also known as trauma. So I'm going to go back to the article. Just watch the movie trailer and replace housing loans with the prescriptions people are being given to meditate and seek out a mindfulness practice for less stress and so on. And for the record, I've got nothing against a healthy loan, it's true, or a healthy mindfulness practice. Some people will know how to work with a legit loan and know how to sniff out the fraud, but many won't, just like what happened pre-financial collapse of 2008. If I switch over to mindfulness, those who have had trauma stored up in their systems, as I've alluded to up until now, this is so important, you guys, won't be able to sniff out the bad apples because their sense of safety, something called neuroception, is faulty. By the way, there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to understand, if you're still living in a deep trauma response and dysregulation, it will be harder to discern what is good or not good for you. So back to the article. They'll be mesmerized by the promise of a shiny life on the other side, the guru-ishness and the good looks of the teacher or the clothing brand or that Photoshop mountaintop with prayer flags blowing in the wind. There is a disservice that is being presented to so many without them even knowing it. It's no one's fault and it's everyone's fault. This is a favorite saying of mine. It's nobody's fault and it's everyone's fault. Meaning we're all in this and we're all having to understand what's going on, and we have to rise up and we have to help each other sniff out the bad apples. I'm going to say this underlying sickness of unawareness and a promise of a quick fix that is insidious in our Western culture underlies both the financial disaster of 2008 and my prediction of a mindfulness mind-body industry collapse. Unless, of course, we steer the ship into a different direction real soon. Remember, I wrote this in 2016. What I'm writing and predicting goes against what so many researchers, experts, officials, and doctors are saying is the next big wave that will save the world. I know from being in this industry now, if we call it an industry, this world, this job of helping people heal trauma and restore regulation, we're already seeing this collapse. It's already happening. I only know that because I have stories that come to me, my team, constantly. I tried this, I tried that, it didn't work, I got worse. I went to this retreat, I went to that, it didn't work, it got worse, I got worse. I'm confused, I'm skeptical, I have no more money, all these things. I'm going to read a little bit more and then I'll end it for today. So I go back to the article because the research is out and it's right? Is it right? Mindfulness helps us build up the brain and helps with stress reduction, focus, and memory. This is true in some cases. I say, sure, I could spend a month of my time slaving away to dig up and assess the peer-reviewed scientific papers that show with statistical significance positive effects on human function and behavior that mindfulness and meditation offer, but I'm not going to. I haven't scrutinized the research. I know what I've experienced in the field, and to restate what I quoted above, if you come from a background of trauma and nervous system dysregulation, having mindfulness and mind-body practices as your entry point into healing is not advised. This doesn't mean that you wouldn't add it in after some basic foundational education and healing begins, but please, not at the start. not at the start. Save yourself some years, dollars, and headaches. One of the things I learned in my short stint in academia, and I've attached my dissertation paper for those of you that might want to see it, was that research is flawed, period. It studies specific variables under certain conditions. The studies, unless epidemiological in nature, usually take place over 8 to 12 weeks. When I was doing my literature review, finding a 6-month study was like finding a gold mine. What does that mean? The research we are using to govern our lives is based on a short window of time, under very specific conditions, and likely with people who do not resemble us. I've also learned in my time intervening with human subjects, because I was working with human subjects, thank God, for my thesis, subjecting them to various protocols, poking and prodding, that some of the most impactful successes, dare I say results, were anecdotal. In other words, the things that I did that were most, one could say, looking like a treatment of science, got us very little results. It was the anecdotal stuff that happened on the side that to me was the most interesting. Meaning the most important findings, in my opinion, could not be reported or published. Some of the most important findings could not be reported or published. This left a sour taste in my cells and is a reason why I have refused to pursue a PhD. It's a true story. What did I learn? How to trust my instincts and watch for trends. To follow not only what I was being told, but to balance that with what felt true to me. I'm going to end it there. To balance what felt true to me. So this is just the tiniest little snippet of this article that I wrote back in 2016. I have seen firsthand what the mindfulness industry and mindfulness and meditation can do in a good way. I've seen it be very positive. And I've also seen it, for the most part, be more negative. Again, this does not mean that there is not a time and a place for these practices, these traditions. But what happens, and I've seen this, is when people get their regulation on board, they get the nervous system back on board, they get their somatic capacity and resilience back on board, their connection with the environment, with themselves back on board in a really solid foundational way, these elements of mindfulness actually start to happen naturally. Just like I've spoken in the past about how we see when people get more regulated, their spiritual practice, if you want to have one, it doesn't have to be forced. You just become more connected to whatever source you want to connect with. It's not hard. It's not a chore. We've also seen eating well becomes easier. Exercising becomes easier. Being able to think clearly becomes easier. Figuring out our career, our passion, our life partners, it becomes easier. Why? Because we're meant to be regulated. And if we go into that level, that foundational level, so much falls into place. But it cannot be done in a quick fix way. And I'll leave you with this. The reason why, if you come back to the human as a baby, us as babies, we are not quick fixed into regulation. Anybody who's had a child knows this. You cannot quick fix your baby into regulation. It takes daily, consistent, hourly connection, care, attunement, co-regulation, routine over years. Years and years and years and years. The good news is, if you're getting this as an adult, which of course you are because you're watching this, because of the higher brain and our life experience, if we're smart with how we work with our brain and our body and connection to the environment, we actually can speed up this process, and it won't take us 12 years to find that full regulation. And as we know, for kids, humans, the brain isn't fully developed even into our 20s. But it doesn't have to take those number of years to get to this point of having good regulation. So that's what I wanted to share today. Again, just a reminder, the title of the article, Is There a Mindfulness Bubble Waiting to Burst? I'll post that below here. It's very easy to find it also on the search engines. Just, Is There a Mindfulness Bubble Waiting to Burst? My name, you will find it. I do recommend the movie The Big Short. It is such a good movie. And it was one of those moments where you just sort of, the clouds part, and I saw it and I was like, I have to write about this. And I've been waiting years to bring this article back and really take it apart and dissect it. And that's what I want to do more in 2025. Again, for all my students who've been with me for years, you know this, I'm preaching to the choir. For all those who are new here and you're like, what, Irene, you want me to read an article that's going to take me 20 minutes to read? Yes, I want you to read an article that's going to take you 20 minutes to read. Think of it like a TED Talk. You're just reading rather than listening. Take notes, make a mind map, everything one needs to know about how to get started in this world of nervous system health and regulation and healing trauma and neuroplasticity is in that article. Of course, all of the steps aren't in there because there are no specific steps. There are practices, educations, integration. That is what I teach in my programs and courses. So if you haven't yet started my programs, my courses, either the 21-day nervous system tune-up or Smart Body, Smart Mind, we're going to be doing that again the end of February. It will be our 17th round of this powerful online curriculum. We'll be starting that again, end of Feb 2025. Be sure to check that out. That curriculum will give you a very comprehensive starting point so that you can learn how to become your own medicine and really just get into what we are meant to do as humans. For you, that's a unique journey. For me, it's my journey. But when we have regulation on board, it really does. It does really put things into the right place. It becomes easier. Life becomes easier. This doesn't mean we won't have stress. This doesn't mean we won't have traumas that come into our system, into our body. But what it means is you will know what to do with those things when they come into your awareness, when they come into your world. Thank you everyone for listening. Again, make sure you read that article, 20 minutes, you can do it. And when you have, come back here, drop a comment, leave a question. I'd love to hear them. Bye everyone.